Hello and welcome to your Advanced Wednesday webinar. My name is Jared Crebs, and today's training is going to be a little bit different because we do not have a guest speaker. That's right, we were not able to secure someone for today's time slot. So I was thinking in my mind, how can we create value for you during this little half hour that we always do every Wednesday? And it just occurred to me to share with you some tips on restoring integrity. And restoring integrity is kind of an interesting, it's an interesting word because it kind of, restoring integrity, okay, I don't want to get too like deep on all of this. All I just want to say is Crystal and I spent 2 years going to Landmark seminars. We learned so much from Landmark. We invested in all the courses. We went through like 4 different courses. They were like, we would drive to Austin every week. And I'm about to share with you the one, we learned a lot in Landmark, but this one strategy is probably the one I use the most from all of my time in Landmark. And it was from the 4th seminar. So it literally cost, probably we invested over $4,000 in courses over the time of 2 years, plus driving to Austin, like all this time. And we learned so many things, and it really, really impacted our life. And I highly recommend you go to Landmark when you get an opportunity. But this training right now is going to be something that can impact your life when you, in your personal relationships, in your business relationships, with your clients, with your team members. And it's called How to Restore Integrity. And basically what it does is it allows you to put the past in the past in a conversation with someone that you might have an issue with that you're dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to first outline the format of restoring integrity, and then I'm going to demonstrate it with my language, how to actually say it. Okay, so there's 4 parts to restoring integrity. Number 1 is acknowledging your part in the situation. Okay, like basically saying, I'm sorry that this happened, or that I did this part of the problem. Okay, so actually saying I'm sorry is a big part of it. You have to be a bigger person sometimes to say you're sorry, because that goes against the ego. You know, our ego wants to be right, and our ego wants to be perfect and have someone else be wrong. But when you can say I'm sorry and actually acknowledge what that you had some part of it, you know, I've used it even. It's like, do I want to be right, or do I want to have peace in my life in a situation? You know, that's kind of what it comes down to. So being actually willing to say that you're sorry is like number 1 part of restoring integrity. Okay, so I'm going to write, I'm sorry for, okay, and you might not feel like it was totally your fault, but that's okay. You can still say I'm sorry for, and put some part of what you feel like might do it. Now, don't do this. Don't be like, I'm sorry that you don't see it this way, or I'm sorry you this, or I'm sorry you that, because now you're actually making them guilty. Now you're actually flipping it. So that's don't do that. Okay, you actually have to say, like, I'll give you an example, but let's go to the next part. Okay, the next part is stating the impact. Stating the impact. Okay, now stating the impact is like the impact of what happened from the situation. Again, I'm going to demonstrate, so I don't want to get too detailed. I'd rather demonstrate. So number 2 is stating the impact. All right. Number 3 is putting a new structure in place so it doesn't happen again. Putting a new structure in place so it doesn't happen again. Okay, actually it's 3 parts. Sorry, it's 3 parts. And I'm sorry about the glare. You're just gonna have to deal with the glare. The ring light's way over far in the corner of the room. I hope you can you still read the letters if I move my head? I can even put it a little bit closer if you can still read the letters. Okay, great. So let me just give you an example of how do you use this, okay? So let's just do it with this Wednesday webinar. Team, I am sorry we don't have a guest for today's webinar. Number 2, the impact is that you don't get a story today. You don't get to hear a story of a USANA associate who had success, and you miss out on your story time. So that's the impact. Number 3 is the structure. And to prevent this from happening in the future, me and my dad and Crystal, and actually I'm going to ask for all of your help in finding other successful USANA associates to share their story. And that we start in advance, like we start looking today for next week's guest, so that it doesn't happen again. Okay, so what did I just do? What I just did was I said I was sorry, right? I acknowledged like my part in the problem. I said how it impacted you, that you don't get to have a story time today. And number 3 is I put in place a structure so that it doesn't happen again. And that structure is that we're going to look earlier for speakers, and we're going to ask your help to also invite people to speak on these Wednesday webinars. Okay, so that's a 3-step process that that is basically what that allows your audience to do, or the person you're talking to, allows them to feel good about it. Like it allows them to say, wow, this really makes you look like a stud if you do this, a stud or a studette, if you use this language, because then it makes the person feel like, wow, the person that I'm working with is very evolved, and this person is very I don't know, it makes you just look like a total rock star if you do this with people. Now, the other thing is, when I put in place a structure, like the structure is that we're going to look for people earlier, and we're going to get more people to help us invite speakers earlier, right? If I fail again in, let's say, 3 months, we don't have another speaker, I can still do the restoring integrity, but then I'll have to think of a different structure, or maybe an alteration of the structure so that it doesn't happen again. You're not going to be perfect. No one is perfect. No one is at 100% integrity all of the time. Okay. But when you use this, and if it doesn't work on the next time, then you do the same process again. So like, if I was to say, like, in 6 weeks time, oh my gosh, team, we don't have a speaker again. I am so sorry. I know the impact is that you don't get your story time today. To prevent this from happening again in the future, we're going to do X, Y, and Z instead, to have a better structure to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So that's it. You just make a new structure. Don't feel bad if your structure doesn't work. Just restore integrity. This also allows it allows you to put the past in the past with somebody, because that person feels like, oh, okay, it's not going to happen again, or they actually care, and they actually care, and they're wanting to make things right, and they have stated a way that it's not going to happen again. All right, so now let's talk about how you can use it in other areas of your life. So let's say that man, this is honestly the coolest thing to do with your spouse. I'm glad that Crystal went to Landmark with me. If you get a chance to go to Landmark and you have a significant other, take them with. In fact, if you can take your significant other to any event, whether it's a USANA event or personal growth or whatever, it's always better, because they'll start to use restoring integrity as well. So last Sunday, and Crystal's okay with me sharing this, it's not that big of a deal, but no, it was Saturday night. we had a date night scheduled for 7 o'clock. And Crystal has a fashion gig, and she didn't get home until 8:30. And she let me know that she was running late. But by the time she got home, it kind of like ruined, I don't want to say ruined the date night, but because we still like hung out, but like it kind of sucked that she was so late, and I was a little upset or sad about it, right? But she like used this. She's like, I'm sorry that I was late. The impact is that our date night is not ruined, but you know, it's been compromised. Our date night is not going to be as good because of my lateness. And to make sure that this doesn't happen again, I'm going to tell my boss that I have absolutely got to leave when I have a time scheduled with you, and there's just nothing that I can stay for, and I will let her know in advance. So Crystal used restoring integrity with me. And then that made me feel like, okay, it's not going to happen again, because she has a structure to make sure it's not going to happen again. And she actually stated how it impacted me. Do you know how cool you look if you're stating how it impacts the person? Like, you know, it impacts you, Jared, because our date night is not as good as it could have been, right? So, I mean, it's just like, it's everything. Restoring integrity is everything, okay? I had a situation one time with a person who was really mad at me for not moving. Like, it was like a moving, I was basically moving out of my old place to my new place. And I was really late on like getting the stuff moved and things like that. And so it's like basically like my old landlord. And he was like I had every right. I felt like I had all the justification to like be where I was and at the times that I was, but I didn't want to create more fights. Like I basically just wanted him to go away. Okay. So I did restore integrity though, in a way that was very kind, and basically said, look, I'm sorry that I'm moving out a day later than I had planned. I know that impacts you because you have to also, you know, clean the place and et cetera, et cetera. And in the future, like, obviously there's not going to be much of a future with you, but in the future, I'll be doing this earlier so that I don't have to put someone through this again. Or I didn't come off that great because I don't have a future with that landlord, but like, you guys get the point. Like, it wasn't about me being right. It was about making peace. It was about using restoring integrity to make peace. How can you use restoring integrity to, how can you use restoring integrity with your clients or your team members, right? Like I've had situations with team members and clients where this really, really, really helped, you know? And again, I just use the formula. I say that I'm sorry for whatever part I played. I state how it impacts them, and then I state a structure in place so that it doesn't happen again. So now I'm going to open it up for questions, and maybe if you want to have some help formulating some language around a situation, I'd love to support that right now to kind of end our time together. I know I actually don't have a clock, so I don't know exactly the time, but let's go ahead and open it up for any questions and or comments. Just unplugged my mic. I see that we have 14 people that are on. Does anyone want to unmute themselves and, number one, share what you learned from this that maybe you didn't already know? And then if you have a scenario where you would like to go through this and be a rock star and help everybody by sharing a scenario, that would be awesome. So who wants to go?
I'll go. I got one.
Sue Ann, hello.
Hello.
Yes. Welcome.
Yeah. So my scenario is interesting because this already sort of happened, and I want you to even tell me if my husband Tom used this without even being to Landmark or knowing anything about this, but you know, just with his own knowledge. So about maybe a week ago, he was like, we need to sit down and talk about money. You know, which is a common thing that every once in a while, you know, spouses say, hey, we got to do this, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, okay. But basically he told me things that he thought that I had done wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So, but we did number 3 at the end. Then funny thing, it was like, okay, yeah, I see where I've been wrong. And then at the end, we ended up with setting up a new structure for how we're not going to let ourselves get in a tight money situation again.
Okay, exactly.
So tell me if we kind of follow that, I mean, without even knowing it.
Well, you did. You definitely did if you admitted that you had done something that, let's say, impacted the family negatively or a certain way, right? So it's in this scenario, if he's coming to you and saying, hey, this is an issue, this is a concern of mine, and then you went on and said, you know what, I'm sorry for my part that I played in this. I know that the impact is that it might put us in not the best financial situation. And to prevent this from happening again, I'm going to do this and this and this. Then what you just did with your husband is you just basically put the past in the past. You allowed him to be like, okay, she understands how it impacts us. She apologized, and then she put in a structure so it doesn't happen again. So now I can move forward with a brand new future with Sue-Ann on this topic.
Yeah, I see that. Isn't that hilarious? Because I've heard restore integrity before, but this was just a natural reaction that I had. And it's always good for spouses to like revisit this issue, because it's like one of the number one breakup issues, is money for some reason. It always gets landed on that. But yeah, so what happened was we did, and we have totally felt better. Like you said, we have that structure, and now we're moving forward into the future, and we're not like focused on what we did before. That's
exactly it.
So.
And I think the only thing that you could have done to be right in the structure is to acknowledge the impact. I don't know if you did that in that conversation, but
we did.
You did. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it, like the impact of just where the money's going, all that, and then how it's impacting other things that are going on, because of course in a household you've got all these multiple streams of income and multiple streams going out. That
for sure.
Take care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we also have those same conversations, Crystal and I, and it's definitely important to not be defensive and to use this structure, especially, I mean, like business is probably the small end of it. I mean, this really, I've used this more in personal situations than business, just because sometimes it's more heated in, personal situations.
Definitely. And the interesting feeling, like, I mean, you mentioned before, like you have to really kind of grow up and not take it personally when someone does bring you a problem. So immediately I was like, okay, like take a deep breath and diffuse all that, and like sit down on the couch with him and let's just talk about this, and I didn't take it real personally.
Good.
But of course the initial thing, boom, and just human nature, right? No, it's not me. And you just want to like jump with that. So it does take a lot to pop that over.
100%. Thank you, Sue-Ann. Really great stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I have one.
Sally.
It's totally different, but on Saturday nights, every day every Saturday when I get off work, I pick up my grandson. That's just our thing. Been doing it for 8 years. And then I keep him till the next morning. Well, I usually start at 3:00 at my other job. And sometimes the grandparents where I'm dropping them off and dad, they are at church still. And my hours at work have come up. I start at 1 instead of 3 frequently. So I have this conflict of going down there and them not being there, and then having him and being late for work. So my compromise was I called one time and said, hey, I'm going to be late. This is the situation. But knowing that when I get there, I'm the relief for everybody to have lunch. So if I'm late, everybody's not timely in getting their lunches. So the second time it happened, I just walked in, I apologized. admitted that this can't continue to happen. And I would come up with an alternative to it. My alternative ended up being that I brought my grandson with me to my job, and the grandparents picked him up within 15 minutes. But it was very awkward because I always over plan everything, or I put too much on my plate and I'm always running. And they know that, but they're thankful that I put them on my plate, but I don't want to take advantage of that. So yeah, just being late to things and having to acknowledge you were wrong and being late. That's really hard for me, but I do it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's definitely an issue, not just for you, for all of us. Like, well, not all of us, but a lot of the population is late to things. And it's the same thing. You would say, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry that I was late. I know the impact is that this and that, and you don't get the time to start lunch. And in the future, I'm going to bring my grandson to work and then have him picked up within 15 minutes so that this doesn't happen again. And like, that's really cool to be able to say that. Now, when you have this structure in your mind, you can actually use it now, like the full way. And it's like, what I hear you saying is that you did it all, except you didn't state the impact that it had on them, right? Stating the impact on them.
Well, they didn't get their lunches.
Right. So that would be the thing to actually verbalize when if you ever get in that situation again.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Now, I have a funny story to share with you. I'm very much there's parts of my life that I'm on time to pretty good, and then there's parts of my life that I'm pretty much late all the time to. And I'm late to go to the chiropractor every single week. I am always late on the way to the chiropractor. And when we had a certain secretary there, it didn't work for her. Like, she really get like mad, and like she would not let it go. And so I started to be on time. I mean, I was going to the chiropractor like for 3 or 4 years. And I use this with her all the time. I was like, Bianca, I am so sorry I'm late. I know that screws up the flow of your work. And so that's the impact. The impact is it screws up the flow of your work office and all your other patients. And in the future, I'm going to leave 15 minutes earlier so that I can be on time. And like for a couple years, I was like really on time with the chiropractor. And then they changed, then Bianca left and this new one came, Tiffany, who just doesn't care if I'm late or not. And they haven't, like, I've been late lots, and there's not an issue. Like, I get there and they're cool, and it doesn't screw up the flow, because usually I'm getting there and like there's still no one there. Maybe they're low on business. I don't think they are, but long story short, it's like it's not a problem, or at least they haven't told me that it's a problem. So I don't necessarily need to do this. But if it became a problem, I would totally do that, you know? So there's going to be situations where you feel like it's maybe a problem and it's not. Or if they do let you know that it is a problem, then you can do these 3 steps. So just a thought I just wanted to say, because things also can change with those types of scenarios. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? How are we doing on time? Are we out of time? Do we still have time?
A little bit over, but
we're a little bit over.
This was perfect. I mean, you know, getting into a new relationship, I think this was a perfect time for me as well, because I'm good at number 1, number 2, but basically I find myself not putting the structure in place to let it not happen again. So I think this was perfect. Yay,
good. I'm glad. Yeah. Oh man, when you're in a new relationship, you know, you're establishing new norms, new boundaries, new all types of stuff. And this definitely, this is a golden strategy. So glad to hear that it's helping. And I think then that's what we're going to do. We're going to put in place a structure so we have a speaker on Wednesdays. I need your help. I need you to invite speakers to speak on our Wednesday. And if you know people in USANA, I mean, you all know people in USANA, successful, gold and above associates is who we look for. Ask them, please, to be a guest on our call. And I obviously, if we have multiple people on the same day, we'll have to move them. It won't always be the right date. But I need your help. I need to enlist your help so that this never happens again and I don't have to do a training on restoring integrity on a Wednesday. But I think it was nice to do it. So thank you all for watching. Let's go ahead and unmute the lines and everyone say, have an awesome day and God bless.
Have an awesome day.
God bless.
God bless. Have an awesome day.